Yes. Now we're cool. Now we're cool. All right. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
I will be frank with you that if I was trying to rig the outcome of this primary, trust me, I could have done. There are so many things that we, not I, we could have done to enhance the campaign of one candidate over another. I will be frank with you that if I was trying to rig the outcome of this primary, trust me, I could have done. There are so many things that we, not I, we could have done to enhance the campaign of one candidate over another. I will be frank with you that if I was trying to rig the outcome of this primary, trust me, I could have done. There are so many things that we, not I, we could have done to enhance the campaign of one candidate over another. I will be frank with you that if I was trying to rig the outcome of this primary,
Welcome, everybody.
trust me,
Mark's
I could
Conte
have done. There are
reporting.
so many things
Look
that
who we got on the,
not I, we could have done
listening to the
enhance
infamous
the
Debbie Wasserman
campaign
Schultz
of one candidate over another.
discussing the many
that
ways
if I was
of
trying to
rigging
rig the outcome of this primary,
an
trust
election.
me, I
What's
could
up
have
in the
done. There are
chat
so
over there?
many
Thank you,
things
Carol
that
Hayes. Good morning. How's
not
everything
I,
look over
we
there?
could have done
Are we doing well? Are we doing well?
enhance
I got a great
the
guest.
campaign of
I got
one
a great
candidate
guest
over
for you guys tonight.
Be frank with you.
You're gonna love this.
If I was trying to rig the outcome of this
Private
primary,
hobby
trust
detective.
me,
How we sounding? How we looking?
I
Give me a
could have done.
thumbs
There are
up. Give
so
me a
many things
hello
that not
if we're not
I, we
buffering
could
or
have
any
done
crap like that.
to
So we get started. Let
enhance
some people get in the
the
room.
campaign of one candidate over another.
And here is my guest tonight. I got Tim Canova, the honorable, the amazing Tim Canova in the house. What's up, Tim? How you doing, man? How are you?
I'm doing great, Marcus. It's really great to be in your house.
Yeah. So get right to it, man. So we're sitting here watching the election, and the exit polls don't add up. Nothing adds up. I've seen discrepancies, from between 7% off and as much as 15% off in the exit polls. Anything more than 2 or 3% is considered election fraud. But no alarms going off. No Democrats. So does it surprise you that that Sanders got cheated again and he didn't do anything about it?
That is my view. I think it's the most likely explanation. You mentioned the exit polls were so far off, and even before the exit polls, before the primary election days, Joe Biden seemed to be like the Walking Dead.
Yeah.
In many of those pre-primary polls, he was back in third or fourth place. I heard Massachusetts, there were some polls, he was barely in double digits. And it was like just a miraculous resurgence. And we're supposed to believe that it's all based on endorsements because, of course, none of us can think for ourselves. When Amy Klobuchar and Mayor Pete endorse, millions of people suddenly change their votes to Joe Biden.
Overnight, they all changed their mind.
Overnight, yeah. And then, of course, there's a bit of vilification of the Sanders voters. The millennials didn't show up. There's one explanation after another. And they bend over backwards not to consider the most obvious explanation, that the source code in the software was simply rigged.
Right.
It's very easy to do.
Yeah. I mean, all the things that you're talking about, all the possibilities of election fraud, we know that there's voter suppression. There's things like shutting down polling places. There's manipulating the media. I even saw when they did it in the election in Illinois, the local media was flashing the results of the next day's election a day early with Biden winning. So you say to yourself,
same thing happened to me, buddy, in 2016. The day before our primary against Wasserman Schultz, the local NBC affiliate, on their website, they had a preview of all the elections that were about to happen. And, whether it was for sheriff or county commission, all the candidates were zeroed out because no votes had been counted yet. But mysteriously, in my race, it had Wasserman Schultz defeating me by almost the exact same spread. She would defeat me the next day.
Wow. I mean,
And we called up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We called up NBC. We never got it. We never got an explanation
right.
to this day.
I mean, I think my assumption is that when they did that, when they're flashing, I know your situation is you were polling at about 35%, and then when the election went off, you only got like 5% of the vote. But I
In
think
the
what
2018 election.
in 2018,
Right. In the 2016, we were in a primary, and our own field numbers had us crushing Wasserman Schultz. Really a landslide. It was not even going to be close. In 2018, in a three-way field, I ran as an independent. It had Wasserman Schultz and our campaign at 34% each. The Republican back in third at 13%. And yes, and that was our experience when we were at all the early voting and election day sites, just judging by the reaction of voters, that it was a close race, like neck and neck. I had no idea how it would turn out, but then when the polls closed, within an hour, they said that Wasserman Schultz won in a landslide, and we got 5%, and we got 5% in every demographic group: blacks, whites, Hispanics, males, females, Republicans, Democrats, independents, and all the experts in computational science. You know, the Democrats love to say how much they believe in science. Well, yeah. Computational science, mathematics, all those experts said that it was mathematically impossible, and one of the nation's leading experts said the results were as unlikely as winning the lottery every day for a year.
Every day for
but
a
nothing
year.
To see here. Yeah, nothing to see.
Nothing to see here, right? And this is not complicated math. This is 1 + 1 is 2, and 2 + 2 is 4, and but 1 + 1 is 1.5 for you and 2 for us, right? It's just shady. It's so shady. I mean, it makes me, you know what it is, Tim. It makes me depressed. I know that you know the numbers inside and out. You know the stuff upside down. But most people watching, they don't believe it. They don't. That's the fundamental problem. They don't want to believe that the system is so corrupt that you're crazy. You're conspiracy kook. How dare you insult
right.
the integrity of our elections, right?
And Marcus, if you just ask, ask to audit the election afterwards, you're not allowed to look at the software, the actual software, because that's proprietary. That's the private property of just basically 3 very shady corporate vendors. If you ask nobody asked to see the ballots. This is what always got me.
Yeah.
Why didn't Bernie ask to inspect ballots ever? I asked to inspect the ballots. I got vilified for it, like I was doing something, completely wrong, but just by asking the question, saying I'd like to see the ballots. Yeah. And what they do, they threw out all the ballots. These are violations of state and federal criminal law, and nobody was prosecuted.
Amazing.
So it's so corrupt, and yes, people get punished and slandered for just asking a question. And the way I look at it is people who are not skeptical of this type of a rigged system. It's the equivalent of somebody believing in Santa Claus at the age of 18 to 75 or whatever. Sure. Right. They still want to believe that Santa Claus comes down the chimney.
I did. I'd be honest with you. I fell for it. I was excited. I went out to Nevada. I covered the Nevada caucus. I was out there talking to the people and in a visual way, the visual caucus where you could actually see people raising their hand and counting numbers and crunching numbers, and Bernie landslided it, and then then we went down to South Carolina, and Jim Clyburn put his thumb on the scale, and all of a sudden Joe Biden is winning by a landslide from out of nowhere. We go into Super Tuesday. Joe Biden didn't campaign in a single Super Tuesday state. He didn't spend a penny.
Yeah.
And Bernie Sanders is doing 5 rallies a day all over the place. And we're supposed to believe that Joe Biden is the winner. He's going to lose. He's going to lose to Trump. There's no way about it. He just can't get it. He can't get any, energy, or he can't get any excitement. He can't put 100 people in front of him. What a disaster! To
me, he certainly looks to be in the early stages of senility.
Yeah.
Seriously,
no doubt.
And the person who I think bears the most responsibility for this, for the movement not wanting to believe the machines are rigged, is the leader of the movement. It's Bernie Sanders. He owed more to those who supported him and donated to him and knocked on doors for him and ran for office, like we did when he called for folks to step up and run for office. He owed more to all of us than to, lose in a lie again, lose by not asking questions, lose by not exposing the corruption. There's no excuse for it as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah. It is a shame, and he's gonna do it again. He's gonna put his tail between his legs. Tulsi Gabbard just dropped out today. She unfortunately also endorsed Joe Biden a few hours ago, and sending her love to Bernie Sanders and his darling wife. But we're gonna back Joe Biden.
From what I understand, Bernie Sanders not only never reached out to Tulsi Gabbard, but spurned her attempts to contact him. I heard this through the grapevine, not from Tulsi herself. But if that's true, that Bernie wouldn't even take a call to be endorsed by Tulsi Gabbard.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this: do you think, with all you know now, because one of the fundamental questions that people ask, or a lot of times it's a troll because people are just campaigning for Trump and they dislike Bernie Sanders. He's a socialist, a communist, all that nonsense. Put all that nonsense aside for a second. Inside of Bernie's brain, do you really think that Bernie Sanders knows full well that he's being cheated, and that his job is sheepdog to bring the young folks into the vote and ultimately turn them to the establishment candidate? Or do you think that he is the real deal and he believes in his heart of hearts that he's gonna exceed that margin of cheating and he's gonna win the presidency? Which one do you think it is?
I'd say that Bernie Sanders knows full well that so many of the machines in this country are inherently vulnerable to rigging, and that he knows for sure. Perhaps going into the primaries, he was hoping beyond hope that somehow they wouldn't rig it against him in 2020, after they got away with doing it in 2016 to him, 2016 and 2018 against me. And I can name you a whole bunch of other progressives who a lot of election integrity experts believe the votes were flipped on them.
Yeah.
Then, if that's the case, he was just being naive. And then when it actually happens to him, when you have like this most unlikely of results in South Carolina, I think Biden won South Carolina. Did he win it by 30 points or whatever, 50 points, whatever they said he did? That's what I find. 30 points, I think they said he won it by. And then Super Tuesday, where, going in, the polls for several weeks going into Super Tuesday showed Sanders ahead in a majority of the Super Tuesday states. Yeah. Biden back in third and fourth in many of the states. And then suddenly Biden wins 10 out of 14 states. And at that point, Sanders, what goes through his head? I have no idea. But, he calls himself a democratic socialist. If he were half as concerned with democracy as he is with arguably a socialist agenda, then he would have exposed the rigging of our elections.
Yeah.
He might be the leader of a movement. It's a movement for Medicare for all, for a Green New Deal. You could say they are socialistic in that agenda, so to speak. But he's not the leader of a democracy movement, that's for sure. Right. And if I had to choose one over the other, I would pick a democracy movement over a movement for socialism right now.
So it's 2020 right now. We tried it the civilized way. We tried to have a fair election. We tried to put up our candidate Bernie Sanders, who has all these wonderful policies for the people, single payer health care and get money out of politics, stop the insurgency wars. We tried to play nice, and we went up against the empire, and the empire crushed us for a second time. And I have a funny suspicion that the whole Corona hype is also a mechanism by which to, it's voter suppression, right? It's keep everybody in their house. If you really think about it, I mean, I don't know if you've given it much thought.
Well, I will say this, Marcus.
Yeah.
If the Democrats are so concerned about the coronavirus, and as they are saying that it's a lethal threat to the entire country, and therefore Trump is not responding, strongly enough.
Mm-hmm.
If that's what they really think, how could they go ahead with their primaries just a couple of days ago in Florida and several other states?
No problem there. No problem there.
No problem.
No.
Yeah. So I just never know what to believe coming out of the Democrats' mouth. They stand for nothing. And where to go from here, I won't support the Democratic nominee. Whether I will vote on a machine where my paper ballot is run through an electronic scanner that has wireless cellular modems on them, and I'm not allowed to inspect the software, I can't even tell you I'm going to vote come November. But I do think that what's left of the progressive movement that is not going to fall in line should be calling on the Trump administration to investigate and prosecute the Democratic Party under the criminal racketeering statutes for corruption and fraud for an organized criminal conspiracy. And when the Trump administration goes forward and actually starts talking about indictments against public officials for lying to a FISA court, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or for pay for play with Ukraine or China, I think we should applaud that Justice Department at this point. The sooner the Democratic Party is splintered and taken down, the sooner those on the left who don't buy into this corporate neoliberal model will have a space. And it goes beyond that. It's not just indictments. Donald Trump himself in the past year has tweeted more than once for paper ballots. For paper ballots. I applaud Tulsi Gabbard for introducing a paper ballot bill. But Bernie Sanders should have been going to the White House to talk, to pressure Donald Trump to move forward on paper ballots. And instead, he was on the sidelines throwing spitballs about Russian conspiracy theories.
I mean, I think what we're saying is all true. Bernie should have done this. Bernie should have walked into the White House and knocked on the door and said, Trump, there's election fraud, and Trump should have did something. But it doesn't seem that anything civil really works. And I'm not saying that the alternative is anarchy. I'm saying that the alternative is big corporations and politicians are only going to respond to circumstances that they have to. And a crash in the stock market is a damn good indicator that something is going on. I've been following this crash. I don't know if you've been following it, but the market is down 33% in 6 weeks. That's an unprecedented, plunge. We haven't seen that since. It didn't even come down that fast in the 80s. In 2008.
In 2008.
In 2008, it didn't come down quite that fast. It came down 45%, but it took like 6 months. Every time Geithner and Obama kept saying the market is shit, the market sucks, it kept going down more and more. But here we saw a relentless plunge to the bottom, a race to just eviscerate these, everybody who's accumulated a penny in their 401k over the last 4 years is basically bottomed out. Is basically gone.
Well, Marcus, we've never had a shutdown of the economy quite like this. You'd really have to go back to 1929 to 1933, and the day that Franklin Roosevelt took office, where there wasn't a bank open for business in the country, and for a week, Americans were paying each other, paying for groceries and everything else with IOUs, with script. And in many ways, this is even worse because Roosevelt took office at the right time. Within a few days, restored confidence in the banking system and the economy, and everything started moving up again. Now we've got this amorphous pandemic threat that seems to I don't want to say grows worse each day, but there's certainly the fears that it's growing worse each day, and the global economy is really shutting down. I think this is going to herald the end of globalization.
Yeah. Max
Pardon me.
Just saw the tail go by. Max
Yeah,
Kaiser
well,
says,
that cat, by the way, this is meet Julian Assange. That's
"Hey, you know what, Tim? Move your head. Cat's beautiful. There's a red light flashing in your background. You see that?
Oh, yeah, that's down the block.
Oh, it's down the wall. It looks like a.
That's a traffic light.
What's the cat's
No,
name, by the way? I'm sorry about that. What's the cat's name?
Well, I named my cat Julian.
Julian.
So I call him Assange. Yes.
Julian's cat. His name is. I think it was Embassy Cat. He called. Well, I guess the people out the window called it Embassy Cat. He probably had a name for it anyway.
Yeah.
But so
Well,
so,
it's good to remember Julian.
it sure is.
The real Julian Assange. Yeah, it is. That guy has paid quite a price. Talk about standing up for your principles and having integrity.
Yeah, and we got to be happy that Chelsea Manning got out as well.
Absolutely.
She's walking around
No
free.
doubt about
She raised her money. The oligarchs said give us $250,000. They thought they were going to shut her up, and she scraped that money together really fast. In 2 days, people came to her rescue and gave here's your fucking money, to the oligarchs. Here's your money. Now leave me alone. What else are they going to do to her? So, but I don't know. It's just it's a disturbing time. I think that and you could call me a conspiracy kook. I don't think I am. I think I'm more like evidence based. When you see the market start to crash 6 weeks ago, and suddenly, all right, so you have this debt bubble. Last time around in '08, and you would know this. In '08, we didn't really know the root of the problem, the internal problem on Wall Street. We didn't know that it was this derivatives market. We didn't know. We had an idea. Like, Henry Paulson was whispering in Bush's ear. Goldman Sachs, AIG owed them $50 billion. They wanted their money tomorrow. Right? They wanted their money now. Right? We didn't know that. Follow the thought. We didn't know the full extent of what Wall Street did to crash the market. No one knew what the credit default swaps were. They were selling insurance against their loss at 40 to 1, like they were leveraging, right? And then when the market ticked down, it was all based on it was stacked on real estate price, right? So we didn't know what was going on. And my suspicion is we don't know what's going on right now, because when the market crashes 40%, right? And suddenly, all of a sudden from out of nowhere, this cover story, which it's starting to look like coronavirus, which now appears to exist in 7 to 15% of all flu cases anyway, and nobody's dying. They never checked for it. Now all of a sudden and I've been walking around the streets of New York asking people, do you know anybody who knows anybody who knows anybody who has coronavirus? And nobody seems to know. People walking into the hospitals, there's nothing. So what I'm saying is, on Wall Street, it's likely that we don't know the extent of what the corruption is. And then I suspect that the pandemic is kind of the cover story to shut the economy down, get their bailout. Everybody looks like heroes. They don't talk about the election fraud anymore, because there is no election fraud to be talked about. We already have our candidate. He's going to go on. He's going to lose to Trump, and everything's going to be okay. Do you believe? Do you follow that thinking that the pandemic could be some kind of cover story for the shenanigans on Wall Street, or is that too far?
So you've asked. There's a lot there in that question. So let me take it a little bit at a time. First of all, I want to push back a little bit about 2008.
Okay.
I'm a law professor, and for more than 20 years, I've been writing critically about the Federal Reserve and deregulation of Wall Street. And I was in the wilderness, as were others who were critical of Wall Street's deregulation. Didn't help my career to be critical of Wall Street deregulation. And when the crisis actually occurred, some of us were not taken so much by surprise. We had been writing about, I wrote against abolishing Glass-Steagall, against deregulating derivatives. So there were people who knew exactly what was going on, including folks at Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, who took out credit default swaps in massive amounts, essentially tanked AIG. They were betting against their own investments. And so they bet against the market. Right. Now, here we've got the coronavirus. And where did it originate from? It sounds like it came out of China. Some people point to Wuhan as the place where China has a military biological warfare factory or a research space. China could be aligned with certain interests in the United States. What would the ulterior motive be? Would it be to make, for any Americans, to make a fortune on the vaccines? Would it be to tank the stock market and bring down Donald Trump? These are questions people are asking. Now, I want to point to two stories that came to me today. Mm-hmm. One is a study says the Italian government study says 99% of their coronavirus fatalities were already sick. Half were diagnosed with 3 or more diseases. Now, it is true the common flu kills an awful lot of folks. Could the coronavirus be, on that kind of par, or is it worse? Yeah. Who knows? The other story that came to me, and this is a troubling one, and this comes out of ProPublica. After assuring the public about the government's coronavirus preparedness, Senate Intelligence Chairman Richard Burr, in one day, sold off up to $1.6 million in stock. A week later, the market began to fall. His committee was receiving daily briefings. Now, that doesn't mean he was behind the coronavirus. It just means that before the public was informed about it, he decided to make a killing.
He's acting insider trading. He's acting on information that he has, and he sold.
Right. So maybe in time we'll find out if there was political or financial motivations behind this virus, the spreading of the virus or spreading of the panic. Who knows? We don't have a very vibrant free press with, I'm talking about the part of the press that really has the resources to investigate. They're all corporate controlled, and they might have no interest in investigating. So it really is going to come out to the political process and the political players to bring out the truth of that. But a lot of folks aren't happy with how the political process has fed us certain narratives going back to the Kennedy assassination or even 9/11 or the run-up to the war with Iraq. So
I don't want to step on your feet, but my take on the corona, I'll say it again, is that I'm now leaning on the fact that the coronavirus was always there. It was like oil in the ocean. It was oil under the ground in the ocean, and nobody ever checked for it because it didn't really matter. It wasn't affecting anybody. It wasn't like it was bubbling out and killing fish or anything. It wasn't a danger, and that's kind of what you have with corona right now. Whereas that when you look at 100% of people with the flu, as I said before, between this one research guy that I looked at said that it exists 7 to 15% of the time anyway. And so when someone gets the flu, they could have this version of the flu or that version or the corona version, and it doesn't even matter. That's the point. So the idea that corona is spreading is actually inaccurate. They're discovering it that a lot of people have it, right? I got sick 2 months ago. Who flew over from Wuhan, China, and landed in JFK.
On others, so maybe they were trying to benefit. I think I'm hoping that in time, within the next few weeks, we have more answers to all of this. I do think as flu season ends and the weather gets warmer, this might fade completely as a real threat, and then let's see how the dust settles.
But back onto the original subject, we don't essentially have a functioning democracy. Nothing that the people say really matters unless we can get to the other thing, which is election integrity. Unless we could actually have the voice of the people, this 30% of young people that are screaming and yelling and knocking on doors, and they want universal health care. They want a a chance at a good life in this country for themselves and their futures. And without a functioning democracy based on elections, the voice of the people, we don't have we have no way of we have an oligarchy dictating what's going to happen next, right? It's like what I mean?
I
It's a
agree with
sad
you.
reality.
This is a corporate oligarchy. It's not a democracy. So it begs the question, what can we possibly do? And, protesting in the streets like the Yellow Vests, I'm not optimistic. I was
Right.
part of the Occupy Los Angeles group. I played a small part in it, not a big part, but I was part of it. And, I saw how quickly the Obama administration, the Justice Department, and Homeland Security coordinated with mayors all over the country, and within just a couple of weeks swept off the occupiers in basically every American city that they existed
Yeah.
in. And now, the powers of surveillance are even greater. I really think there's not much chance of bringing about social change by that kind of an Occupy movement. So I'm not sure where it leads us. I do recall back when there was the Soviet Union, and they had a media that was not free either. Now ours is more like the Tower of Babel, right? There's thousands of outlets, but 90% of them are owned by 6 corporations. Okay, that's what they're saying. 6 corporate conglomerates. In the Soviet Union, it was really one big brother behind whatever media outlets existed, and that mass media in the Soviet Union, it really lost a lot of legitimacy. The Russian people, the Soviet people, just didn't believe what they were being fed anymore, and the change started coming about through conversations that ordinary folks had around the dinner table, in whatever small social gatherings they could feel free to discuss the truth. And I think that's the only way change is going to come in this country. Your show is a part of that, and lots of folks who are podcasting like that are part of it. Yeah. And really, the only thing we can do, we're not free to exercise the franchise and vote in a free, fair, transparent, and verifiable election. But we are free to think for ourselves, and we are free to speak our own truths, and there is an objective truth, and we have to start trying to speak to others about it. You start with the premise that I do, that this is no longer a functioning democracy. What can we do about it? Well, we can pretend it is and join up with Bernie Sanders and campaign again and, just tell ourselves it won't happen again. Somehow, the movement will be so big they can't rig it. And yet they do. I mean, really, right. They chose somebody who they can hardly stand up on the stage and made him have a miraculous recovery. So all we can really do is tell the truth. And I think the number one truth that I've learned in 4 years now of trying to take down Wasserman Schultz here is that, and I arrived at this truth by speaking to a lot of experts, election experts. And I believe what I'm hearing, that 98% of the electronic voting machines in our country are inherently vulnerable to outside hacking and to insider manipulation of the software.
Yeah, there's not a doubt in my mind at this point that's what I believe at this point. That it's not statistically possible what we're seeing. Right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that is definitely the fact that all of these numbers funnel into a mysterious place where three central spots and no one's accountable for it, and these machines could be hacked by teenagers and they have cell devices. It's just so ridiculous, right? That we can't have maybe something secure like an ATM machine or just paper ballots. Just how hard is that?
Paper ballots.
Exactly. Put paper on the table.
When people talk about American exceptionalism, we are the exception of the countries that profess to be democracies. All the other ones have banned the electronic voting machines and they have paper ballots. But we're exceptional. We'll believe in the black box. We don't know who's counting the votes and we don't know how they're counting it, but somehow we just trust that they have our interests at heart, even though there are forces out there that now have the means, the motive, and the opportunity to rig our elections. It can happen to us. We're the United States of America.
You know what's very interesting. You hit a good point when you said that the answer to this, the way out, right? I look at I look at life as this. This is a good analogy. Check this analogy out, right? You're inside of a box, right? You're in this box, right? And you don't know how to get out of the box, right? There's no way out of the box, right? But outside of the box, there's these instructions that say, this is what you have to do inside the box to get out of the box. And all someone has to do is read you the instructions from outside of the box, right? And then once you know, I say, oh yeah, and then you can get out of the box. But until someone reads you the instructions, until someone actually tells you the instructions, you can't get out. And a pandemic, in a strange way, is putting people in the box, because it prevents people from doing what you said, which is gather in the public square, around the at the bar, in the park, and gather. And so what does the pandemic do? It prevents people from gathering. And now, even in this, what's up, Vinny DiMartini? What's up, Sterling Price? Hold on one second, Tim. Sure. Let me know, Vinny and Sterling, did you guys get notified you shut down the public square where people can speak is something of a front, and the elections are fake, and the markets are crashing because it's some kind of crazy manipulation, right? So this is like lunacy, right? It's like, what do we do? What do we do? We're getting attacked. It was buffering, but it's good now. Okay, all right, we're back. We're back. It doesn't seem like, yeah. So anyway, Tim Canova, it's good to talk to you. These are trying times. Who's right? Are we right? Are they right? Is it?
Well, I certainly think we're right that what's it going to take? A military coup to reimpose democracy on this country?
Report guy, the RT guy, he's a Wall Street guy. I watch him once in a while, and he said he thinks it's the death of. He's saying that the economy as we know it is now death. That the corporate
there's a good possibility. Yes.
That it falls.
Look, I've been a critic of the World Trade Organization, the IMF, private central banking, this globalization system that takes care of big corporate interests. But how do you just reinvent it? You can't just reinflate that model. The fear of pandemics are out there, and whether the fear is justified or not, it's now out there, and it has exposed the lunacy of relying on a country on the other side of the earth, which is not a democracy, which is a very controlled media in China, the lunacy of relying on them for everything, from our basic pharmaceuticals to face masks, surgical face masks, to, so many other things. Our cellular devices, even parts of our voting machines have been outsourced to China. The parts for our voting machines that we've been talking about. Right. Just lunacy. So to the degree it brings production and manufacturing back to the United States, I applaud that. That's not protectionist. That's the American model. From Alexander Hamilton to Abraham Lincoln to the industrialization of the United States behind a wall of protective tariffs, and at the same time having a government that would invest heavily into its own infrastructure. That's the American model. Economists used to call it that in the 19th century.
It sounds like Tim, that you're saying that the crash and burn of the economy as we know it is actually a good thing. Is actually a reset.
It's going to lead to something very good, I believe,
reset
and maybe sooner than people realize. I also think it could be the death of this kind of private central banking. The private central banking system supports this Wall Street model, and look at how the central banking system was used in 2008 to almost present day, really. It bailed out Wall Street with trillions of dollars of near 0% interest loans, while my law students were paying 13%. Even today, they're still paying like 6 or 7%. and yet a Wall Street bank can borrow it at zero. The same Wall Street banks that crashed the economy
And never pay it
destroyed
back.
the market.
And never
No,
pay it back.
never.
They don't even pay it back.
Absolutely not. So, the sooner that we move to a different kind of a monetary system and a different type of an international trade system, one that is based on reciprocal relationships, the better. And look, 4 years ago, I was hoping Bernie Sanders would be the president who would bring that change. And the irony is that we get Donald Trump, and I know we're all supposed to hate Trump, okay? I'm going to put the hatred aside for now. We can debate later if he's the greatest racist, misogynist, corrupt, blah, 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 okay?
He's none of those
The fact is, exactly, and the fact is, he killed off the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Hillary Clinton never would have. We all know that.
Right.
He renegotiated NAFTA. Obama promised to and never did.
Right.
He has moved forward with reciprocal bilateral trade agreements with China, with Japan, with South Korea. He's probably going to do the same with Great Britain and the European Union. And he's taking on the Federal Reserve. That's not a bad track record.
Whoa. How is he taking on the Federal Reserve? How would you?
So last year, the Federal Reserve was still raising interest rates, and it looked like we were heading towards another collapsing bubble. And for whatever financial and political reasons, we don't really know those reasons because these private central bankers are not accountable to us, really. They come to Capitol Hill twice a year, give their dog and pony show. But in the past, a president never would have really thought about speaking out so publicly and saying, the Fed doesn't know what it's doing. The Fed's the greatest threat to the economy. The Fed should stop raising interest rates. Now, if the Fed had kept raising interest rates, we would have been in a 2008 kind of a collapse, perhaps. Okay? It might not have been mortgage-backed securities. It might have been corporate loans that are collateralized.
Yeah, debt. Corporate debt.
Okay? And then Trump pushed them to start lowering rates. So it started to extend the boom. Now, he's still pushing them. He's pushed them to the point where interest rates are just at about zero.
Yeah.
It's going to get to the point where the Fed is going to have to pay big banks to borrow money, and then the banks hopefully will lend it to us at lower rates.
But they never do.
And
they never do.
They never do. And for
Japan is already negative. Japan already has a negative interest rate. There's where I would disagree. We would disagree there that the form of quantitative easing that Trump is using is actually incorrect in that he's causing, because the banks, all they'll do is they'll buy back their own stock. They'll inflate the bubble, pump air into the bubble until it pops, because that's all they know how to do. But I
hear you, Marcus. But if what he's
and the
doing
tax
at the
cuts,
same time,
he gave all these swines tax cuts. He gave them immunity to the tax havens where they take all the profits and take it and run. He knocked their tax rate from 34 down to 21% that they don't pay anyway.
And again,
so in that respect,
this is why I was hoping the change would come from a Bernie Sanders and not a Donald Trump 4 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but what has he done? What has he done for people? People are still living, and we're going to see this in full stereo right now, that people were living paycheck to paycheck. People don't have $500 for an emergency. More than half of the country doesn't have $500 for an emergency. And now we have an emergency because they're not working. And now we're going to see the full.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard called for universal basic income right now of $1,000 an adult per month. And I believe Trump has been saying he's for something like this. That would be ironic if Trump gives us UBI in this crisis. Right. Barack Obama didn't give us any UBI in a crisis.
Right. I have the article. I have the article up right now. It says Senate GOP nears deal on $1,200 check to earners under $75,000. Washington Senate Republicans are closing in. They're going to do $1,200 for all taxpayers. It looks like they're gonna sign that. Could you
please forward that to me, Marcus?
It's a front page of the Post, the New York Post. I'll forward to it. Sure, I'll forward to it.
Okay, thank you. There are other things Trump has done, surprisingly. And, you're a New Yorker. I've been a New Yorker most of my life. I was born and raised in New York. Right. Donald Trump never freaked me out. I couldn't say I was a big fan of his, but you know, he doesn't come from a Bush or Clinton crime family either, and he did give us the only criminal justice reform in a progressive direction in our lifetime.
Okay.
That's a sad state. That's a sad state of a statement you could say on the Bushes, the Clintons, and Obama.
Yeah.
But that First Step Act was maybe the only reform in the direction of away from mass incarceration.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think anyone is 100% evil and nobody's 100% good. And what bothers me about the last 4 years is that the Democrats are trying to program everyone to believe that Donald Trump's 100% evil. He does nothing right at all.
Yeah.
Well, you know, his trade policy is an improvement, and we'll see what his criminal justice reform is an improvement.
Okay.
There are a lot of things I don't like that he's doing. Don't get me wrong, a lot of things.
Right.
But, you know, I refuse to get on board with you got to endorse Joe Biden because Donald Trump's the most racist, misogynistic, corrupt person to ever walk into the Oval Office.
Yeah,
I don't buy it.
Trump is no different than the average guy, the average New York guy that you run into on the subway, full of opinions, full of himself, loud, opinionated. He's not.
Exactly.
He's not. If he's a racist and a misogynist and a sexist, then I'm probably twice that because, you know what I mean? Like he's not. He's none of those things. Anybody from New York knows that, right? He's just my problem with him is that he still believes in the Reaganomics, Alan Greenspan, trickle-down economics, give the corporations all the breaks in the world, and they're going to reciprocate because they create the jobs.
He never had it.
He never had
an opportunity. He never had an opportunity to govern from the center, did he? You know, when your political enemies call for you to be impeached within 20 minutes of you taking the oath of office. You know, the Washington Post published something 19 minutes after he took the oath of office. You could see how it would have driven him into the hands of the most extreme Republicans to have to rely on to make sure he doesn't get impeached.
Okay, I see that thinking. Yeah. But it's the same thing that happened to Obama. Obama, Mr. Hopey Changey, went in, and he, you know, there was 10 million, 20 million people pushing him and holding him up on their shoulders. And Obama got to the White House, and then he just says, "Okay, I got this." And he went in there, and then they, you know, the usual surround him with the oligarchs and the military-industrial complex, and he was surrounded. You know, just a lonely guy.
With Obama, it turns out WikiLeaks showed us that there was that Citigroup memo where Citigroup basically chose Obama's entire cabinet.
Yeah.
Before he was elected, right? Robert Rubin and company.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was okay with that.
He wasn't exactly who we thought he was. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. He was okay with that.
I think that he was. I think there was a moment there leading up to Occupy Wall Street. I think Obama actually believed what he was saying to some degree, and then within 6 months he realized that the power that he was up against, they probably would have killed him. They probably would have poisoned his kids. There's got to be some kind of fear.
Who knows the kinds of threats that any president gets?
Right.
You know, I was disappointed in Obama before Occupy when he failed to show up in Wisconsin to support the public teachers that were under attack in Wisconsin.
Right.
You know, he was unwilling to go there, and he did nothing really for the suffering middle class and poor in the aftermath of the worst of the 2008 crisis. And I think that's why in 2010 the Democrats lost the House.
Yeah. Wow. So, you know, so where do we go forward? I mean, you know, it's going to be, I mean, this is not even a hard prediction to make. Biden is going to, I mean, he's going to be like this kind of, they're going to create a TV campaign for him where everything is going to be very controlled and very rehearsed. And they're only going to release his finer words and his finer qualities. They're never going to challenge him and they have their opportunity because of this corona thing, right? No more big rallies. Bernie Sanders is probably going to shut down within the next week. And he's going to go on and he's going to lose to Trump unless the Democrats out-cheat the Republicans, which I don't think they can do. I don't think they're capable of pulling that one off because the Republicans are just as nasty and evil, and whoever controls the governorships and the the mayorships,
Yeah.
they're gonna that's where they're gonna do the cheating, right? So I think that I mean, this is not a hard one to call. He's going to finish out his term. He's going to get 4 more years, and then I think in my heart of hearts is that he's not going to be the campaign president anymore. They're going to loot the country in a way that we haven't seen before. I think that I just don't think that Trump has the best interest of people in mind. I don't think that he understands the economic way out for the people. I think he sees it as, he sees it from the glasses through the lenses of a billionaire, and that's just I don't see any evidence that
Well,
goes the other way, other than
well, I'll tell you
give
this,
everybody $1,200.
Marcus. When you look at the economic advisors that Trump has,
Yeah,
Peter Navarro on trade, Larry Kudlow, Judith Shelton on central banking. And then you see that Donald Trump has a portrait of one president in the Oval Office, and that's Andrew Jackson, who took on the second Bank of the United States and vetoed the recharter. You could look at it that way and have some hope that he's got some advisors around him who know what they're doing. But these are times that, how can you predict anything?
yeah,
As we're speaking, this entire country is in a lockdown, basically. And I think it's only going to become a tighter lockdown in the coming days. It's going to start looking like almost a medical martial law around this country for several weeks.
right,
How we come out of this crisis is anybody's guess at this point. And I don't venture to make a guess right now. What I will say is that we don't have a democracy. The voting machines, we should presume they're rigged. You might be right that Donald Trump is going to defeat Joe Biden or anyone else who might replace Joe Biden if he becomes too infirm to carry it all the way to November. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, I don't know. Again, I don't venture to guess. But we don't have a democracy. We're the only country to profess to be a democracy that still uses these ridiculous voting machines that you can't trust. And that's got to be the basis of every discussion at this point.
yeah,
It's got to be the starting and ending point of every discussion. And it will be for me. I think this is what we have to stand for. And millions of people won't vote, even before this virus. You look at the 2016 election, 96 million Americans who could have voted didn't bother registering, or they were registered and didn't bother voting. And 64 million voted for Clinton, and 62 million voted for Trump, or something like that. So more people didn't vote at all. And perhaps that's the way it should be until they really have paper ballots that you can trust to vote. Perhaps that's what a democracy movement is actually, what it might take, is mass boycotts of an election.
yeah.
I don't know, but I'm just thinking out loud about it as somebody who threw myself into the gears of the machine twice.
Yeah.
I can tell you what I found out. It's a machine, and it's a corrupt machine.
It's ugly.
And it's corrupt at the moment that we're voting, we're complicit in it.
Would you ever run for Would you ever run for office again under the current circumstances? Is it even worth it?
Might not be. You know, it certainly doesn't seem worth it to vote. If we move to paper ballots, then, sure, maybe I'd run again. I'm happy being a law professor. I was happy being a law professor in 2016. I didn't need the job on Capitol Hill, which is perhaps why I can speak the truth about it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, as a YouTube guy, you would think that more people at home quarantine would be watching YouTube and watching shows like this. But again, YouTube has a way of figuring that out to shut it. I mean, look, you remember in, final thought, you remember in 2008 when Facebook and Twitter, it wasn't, or YouTube, it was 2016, not 2008, 2016. And you saw people coming together on Facebook, and they were memeing, and they were conjugating and creating these incredibly large groups of Facebook groups, and people were getting together, and they were actually able to move public opinion. And this time around, that's all but gone. The attempts are there, but they figured it out, right?
Look,
they figured it out. They
that's
figured
right.
out how to put the brakes on.
They did it to me. I've been shadow banned and throttled, and there's a cap on my viewers and all of that. You know, there's an old adage, of course, you know, politics make strange bedfellows. And I already said that I was hoping that the Bill Barr Justice Department will bring prosecutions against corrupt Democrats, including, I hope, Brenda Snipes, who destroyed the ballots illegally here in South Florida. And you would think the Republicans might actually have an incentive to do so at this point, to uphold the rule of law. Well, it turns out that the Justice Department has been investigating these big tech giants you're talking about, Facebook, Google, Apple, YouTube. And those investigations were recently, it was reported, taken out of the hands of the career prosecutors, and Bill Barr himself is now overseeing those investigations. And while I have not been a Republican, I'm not registered Republican, I have voted against a lot of Republicans in my lifetime, I am hoping that the Republican administration and the Republican Justice Department does its job and starts enforcing the law. And the sooner that they start applying criminal antitrust laws to these big tech giants and criminal racketeering statutes and prosecutions to Democrats who have rigged everything imaginable, the sooner we might actually get our democracy back.
Yeah. And add tax evasion to that as well, that pile. Stop,
exactly.
You know,
money laundering and tax evasion. Absolutely.
Right. So, I mean, again, you know, if I haven't looked at Google lately, but Google's on the Dow, and Google's probably one of the big drags on the Dow right now. I mean, I'm just, you know, I'm thinking like, if the thing collapses, right? If Google collapses, if these giant techs collapse, maybe that's a point of, you know, a better place to go forward rather than suing everybody in court. Because I think today in law, I'm no lawyer, but I've been sued, you know, and I've sued people. And I don't think I have a feeling that the idea of what is justice, what is the actual, you know, what is actually legal anymore is so gray. Right? We know what's illegal in terms of, you know, petty crime. If you jump over the turnstile, you take that person, you throw them in jail for theft of services. But we don't know in terms of like how banking operates, where Goldman Sachs steals $7 billion from the Malaysian government and gets hit with a fine of, you know, $2 million. They steal $7 billion.
Marcus, I'll say,
you know what I mean? What is legal? You know, we don't even know what's legal anymore. We don't even know what, you know what I mean? That's the kind of place we're in right now.
For a private litigant, you know, to bring a private lawsuit, good luck. It's very difficult. And my hat's off to Jared and Elizabeth Beth for their DNC class action fraud lawsuit. That's very difficult. The Justice Department's another story, though. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the Justice Department under Eric Holder could have brought criminal actions against the big bankers for all kinds of fraud.
Right.
Against their own clients and against the public. They chose not to. I do think fraud is easy to prove in front of the grand jury. But when you've got a revolving door that goes right up into the Justice Department, good luck on proving fraud, even when it's right there in your face.
Right.
I think we're going to see something in the next few months. I think we're going to see criminal prosecutions of FBI and DOJ officials that lied to a FISA court, and I think that's the tip of an iceberg. And I think that's what's coming up now in 2020 after this primary season seems to be now closing down. The coronavirus, you know, scare, I think, you know, it'll go on for another few weeks, but at the end of the day, I am hoping for Justice Department prosecutions and somehow a space to start opening for a democracy movement where people are very clear that we need paper ballots and we will not trust the machine anymore. Yeah. Rage against the machine, my friend. Rage against the machine.
Thank you so much, Tim. So we'll kill it here. We're going for over an hour. Great talk, man. Great talking, man. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for watching as well.
You.
This is again Tim Canova.
Thank you, Marcus.
What are you up to these days? Are you promoting anything? Promoting a book? Promoting Twitter? Or where are you? Where can people find you?
I'm working on a book. I'm working on a book. I'm teaching at a law school. I'm active on Twitter and easy to find on Twitter. We've got a community advocacy group, Progress for All. People can go to progressforall.org. We do accept small donations, and they help a lot. We're able to basically monitor what's happening in these corrupt elections and to expose as much as we can. We had a forum here, a public forum in Hollywood just a few months ago, and we're making a documentary film out of it. And it's entitled 98%. And that stands for the 98% of electronic voting machines that are inherently hackable and riggable.
Awesome, man.
So send some love to progressforall.org and help us make our documentary.
Keep going, because we don't know where this media, this new social media is leading. You know, it's like if Google fails, we're still here. You know, we're still here, and I'm optimistic. I mean, I remember MySpace. Remember MySpace and all these newfangled things that pop up. Don't think that YouTube and Twitter are the last hurrah. We're just getting started, in my view. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, now is not the time to give up. Yeah. You know, it's easy to give up on electoral politics. I understand that. Yeah. The Sanders campaign has been a big disappointment in not exposing how the rigging destroyed the campaign itself. But
that is his legacy. That will be Bernie Sanders' legacy, I think.
Unfortunately, but true. But look, you're speaking the truth. I'm speaking the truth. And everyone out there who's listening, use your mind. You got a mind of your own. Don't be sheep. Speak the truth. That's the way change really will come.
Right.
And that's my parting thought.
Great, man. Thank you very much, Tim Canova. We'll do it again. All right? We'll do it again sometime when there's something important. We'll see who's right about the corona. We're going to find out much more about it. We'll find out the essence of the stock market crash. We'll find out if everybody's going to get $1,200.
The prosecution, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, Marcus.
Peace.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Peace out.
Bye. Tim Canova, man. Awesome, right? That guy's fucking great, man. Love that dude. Hey, Mark Conte reporting, man. So thank you very much, everybody. I know it was a bumpy thread. I know people didn't get notified. This is what we're up against, man. You know, this is the shit right here, right? We're all quarantined. People can't socialize. They can't talk to each other in person. And now it appears that why suddenly are the numbers down? Why suddenly and people not getting notified on YouTube? You know. So, but thank you very much. Thanks, Vinny DiMartini in the house. Vinny DiMartini, Sterling Price. Be safe. I know. Great guest. Yeah, he's a good dude, man. Yeah, Niles. He's the real deal. Thank you, Carol Hayes. Thank you, Vinny and Sterling, for your moderation. So we'll see what's up next, man. We'll just keep going. He's a good guest. I like that guy. He was I think earlier today he was on Jimmy Dore, but that's a real dude. That guy went up against. I mean, you talk about fight authority. Like, he went up against the Debbie Wasserman Schultz DNC machine and tried to upseat her. And he was getting like 35-40% of the vote. And when he got to the, when it was final, when push came to shove, they gave him less than 5%. They said, here, here's 5%. And what happened to the other 30%, right? It's just over cheating, right? So that guy knows what he's talking about, man. He tried to do a recount on his ballots, and they destroyed his ballots. They destroyed the paper. The woman, what's her fucking name? Snipes down in Florida. They committed fraud. They committed felony fraud on the guy, right? So he knows what he's talking about. Plus, he's a lawyer, you know what I mean? So a great guest, man. So Mark Conte reporting. I don't have anything else. I don't have any music keyed up. And so I'll see you guys in the morning, man. Mark Conte reporting. Still reporting.